We're back again for another episode of the Clearshot podcast, where we talk all things podcasting for business. Today we're chatting with Lance Meikle, the founder of multiple businesses in the financial advisory space. As you'll hear in this episode, Lance has had quite the journey into podcasting before coming on board to record his podcast with Clearshot Digital. Thank you very much for being on the Clearshot Digital podcast.
You're welcome.
We're a couple of episodes in. I must thank you for being one of the people that pushed me to create it.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Very welcome.
So the point of the show is we have a bunch of people on who have some experience with us creating podcast content. The thing I really wanted to talk to you about was podcasts for business. Firstly, could you tell us a little bit about your experience with creating your own show?
Yeah, it's not a pretty one, but it is what it is. I think all experience counts. So with my own show, it was incredibly difficult So I undertook to touch podcasting circa 2015. Saw and found an interest in trying to articulate a message, which I'm sure we're going to get to, via a different medium. And I identified podcast as something that interested me as a business owner and wished I could absorb what I would like people to absorb, which was information and message in a succinct, time-flexible manner. So I liked that infrastructure and that ecosystem. And it didn't exist. So at the time, living on the Gold Coast, business based in Brisbane, tried to find a solution, as well as offshore remotely, trying to find a solution that was going to align with what I required as a business, small business, medium business owner, revenue around $1 million turnover, and wanting to grow. And I couldn't find on the internet something that aligned with my niche being that small business owner. There was the noise around the success stories, the global players, the multinationals, the big spend, the marketing agencies, and I didn't fit that brief.
Okay, so what was it then that attracted you to podcasting as a business owner?
What I did know was that as a business owner, I didn't want to be reading pages and pages and pages of crap as a business owner. So I kept thinking to myself, right or wrong, if I could in an audible fashion paraphrase pages and pages and pages of content, because we speak quicker than we can type or read, that would be a respectful way for my message to get to an audience so they could utilise their time, stop and start when they wanted, if they wanted, versus reading pages and pages and pages of shit which they're not going to read as business owners, so therefore ineffective having PDF documents sitting on a website or sending somebody an email.
So you started your own podcast. What was your knowledge about podcasting like at that point? Was it a steep learning curve for you?
I think like most people listening to this, if they're a business owner like I was, they won't know the difference between what a show and an episode was. So that's how ill-informed I was. I was confused with what was a show, what was an episode. I didn't know the difference. What I knew was that I pushed a button on my phone and there was noise coming out of it. There was no video, it was noise. So hence it was called a podcast, not a vodcast, but they didn't exist in my world in 2015. And that was great. That was fine. And I think that's an important message for people watching and listening. Having done that, to answer your question, and I think it's an important point not to miss, it's okay to not know.
Yes.
I didn't know, and I wasn't made to feel as though I should know because there was nobody I could talk to. So it was all in my world, doing my own research, trying to work out a solution for my own business.
But despite not knowing these things and not being able to find the help you needed from a local studio or podcast company, you persevered on your podcast journey on your own, right? What did you end up doing?
So where I actually ended up, to answer your question, was I ended up learning a whole lot about the production of a podcast thing called a show or an episode. And fortunately, I ended up finding out about microphones and audio quality and all of the things that make these things work, but I couldn't find anybody to do it. So through that, I learned a lot of information which led me to, why don't I have a crack at this myself? Because now I understand what's involved in putting one of these things together, which is a microphone of some description, headsets of some description. There was no video, so I didn't need that. I needed content, which was challenging, but as a business owner, I thought I had that ability to do that.
Well, you talk about it most days, right?
Yes, and most business owners, it's their baby, which can be a trap. And I didn't know the difference between that being a trap or not then. And then I ended up, through the process of finding out that to put one of these things together, these podcast things, there was this editing, which I had no idea what that was. I didn't realise there was editing. I thought it was all legitimate, that people spoke.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And everyone's perfect all the time.
And everyone was perfect all the time. And I was so impressed. So I spent a lot of hours, and I learnt that, sort of 20 to 45 minutes is sort of the range that's acceptable back then. So I spent a lot of time talking to myself in my office around how could I just talk for 20 to 45 minutes and play it back and listen to myself. And I did that on my phone. So that was where I really started. So when I was trying to search on Google, I ended up finding all about the production of one of these podcast things. I learnt the difference between a show and an episode and what the artwork was, and had no idea there were all these rules around, to get through firewalls. At Apple, you needed certain DPIs and you needed certain things to, So I ended up going to America to someone to do my first artwork for my first thing, which I found out was an episode in a show. So I had to get a show cover artwork, and my first artwork was $850, and I was delighted. I couldn't pay it quick enough. I felt like a big boy. Big boy pants were on. I've got artwork. I felt like I was seriously.
Step one, yeah.
I was scared, to be honest.
Yep.
I thought, well, I got the artwork. I've practiced talking for 20 to 45 minutes. I realised there's some editing stuff. Had no idea what was ahead for me. So, yeah, when I Googled, I ended up with production answers, not solutions to how to actually get it done.
Yeah, I think the people that come in here most of the time, our Clearshot clients, have an idea of, most people come in and say, I want to do a podcast.
Yes.
Whether they've thought about, and often they haven't thought about the intricacies that go with that. Yeah, that solution that we have, which is sit down, have a chat, and then here is your podcast. There are a few steps in between, but that is what we do.
Yes.
So it's for people that...
Thank goodness.
Yeah. So, yes, podcast studio, podcast recording, podcast
artwork, editing.
Artwork, yeah, that's all the things that we take care of.
Audio quality, yes.
But I haven't really thought about it from someone's perspective who has no idea about anything. And
Sure.
That's okay. Was your intention to go out there and try and get 200,000 listeners, or was your intention to go out there and hopefully connect with 1 or 2 or 10 people?
Neither.
Just get it out there.
Neither. No. My intention was to have a presence, to be relevant as a business owner that was contemporary in my space, leading edge, so that I selfishly, egotistically, felt as though I wasn't going backwards in my sector. And that was my limitation. I had no expectations beyond, if that could happen, wow. That was where I was.
So 10 years now, for
Yes.
give or take.
Yeah, it feels like longer, but yeah, 10 will do.
10 years now. Do you think it's reasonable, or if you were to look at someone's website now and they do have a podcast on there, does that still put them ahead? Does it put them on leading edge, or is it so common now that it's expected?
Yeah, I typically don't look at websites. I typically listen to podcasts, and I don't go to the website. Having gone through the journey, I find the relevance is in the authenticity of the information, the transparency of what comes through the noise and or the pictures these days, the vodcast and or the podcast. That's all I need for credibility. I don't need to validate on a website. And if I'm going to engage beyond that, if I want to touch that business for whatever reason that may be, either as a consumer or to cross-pollinate or to network, whatever it might be, I'm going with the credibility of the podcast, not the website.
Well, I suppose that's my question. The question then goes to, do you feel like you get more of an understanding of a business from their podcast versus their website?
The website for me is an outdated model that you need to have, and I'm taking this in 2024, not 2015-16 context for the purpose of your question. It is a given that if I go to a website, it's going to have what's expected to be there, whatever that is: information, accessibility, communication, offering, services, about, history, dialogue, social presence. But I don't spend my time today, 2024, going to people's websites to use a medium that's a pain in the ass for me to find the content I'm after. I expect podcast, it's a given. If I can't get the information I'm after via podcast, I've disengaged anyway. I'm not engaged, so I don't even know they exist.
I take your point. I think that's really interesting for people to consider who are listening. The other thing I wanted to discuss was around your use of your podcast within your business. So one way is to put it on your website or put it on Apple and let people find it. How have you utilised your podcast episodes in your business?
Poorly. Historically, from that predisposition 2015 onwards, poor quality, poor audio, home office, remote, AirPods, incorrect mics, arguably reasonable artwork, hopefully for the price. But I didn't know any different. I tried to find, I couldn't access what I was after. I had awareness. To my dismay and my absolute amazement, following that approach with bad input, bad quality compared to what's available today, and may have been available then, but I couldn't easily find it, I somehow it got reach, and somehow it produced revenue, and the amount of subscribers and people giving me feedback through either socials or phone or email, whatever it may be, touching my business, was incredible. So through poor execution, but with a whole lot of effort and input from my end, something was better than nothing. So it exceeded my expectations, which were low, to my amazement. And that became a bit of a crossroads when fortuitously I come across Clearshot and started talking about, there's you have mics and you understand this stuff and you are accessible and you are approachable as a business and you are humane and your price point didn't concern me because it was transparent. Maybe I don't need to keep doing this amateur hour best I could moving forward. And the flexibility made that possible to really to be freer of time. And so there's a crossover for me. My experience is where my revenue through podcasting well and truly offset what the cost was going to be of getting a studio on these things to do, but I had to crawl before I could walk.
And how, if you were to do it all again and everything was perfect and the audio was beautiful and the artwork was amazing and the delivery was available for everyone, how would you utilise the episodes if you were to do it all again?
I wouldn't. I would outsource that to somebody who knows what they're doing, and I'd take my hand off the steering wheel because that's not my hen house. So instead of me trying to work out how to do that, which is what I did.
Yep. That's my last one that I wanted to discuss with the content that you put out there. How do you determine what your listeners want, what your potential audience wants to hear about?
I've got a board of advice, so that helps. Not every business has those, but that's how I do it. I have a board of advice that agitates me with what I'm not doing, where I'm not relevant, what trends are emerging, what I need to be freely giving away that I have that I'm not aware has value. So I'm directed via my network, by my board of advice. I'm directed with that to answer that question. It's not me. And I'm also directed by the likes of Clearshot, who challenge me to now, who do all the outsource that to Clearshot. I get the host guiding the conversation rather than me having to be the host and play the role of host, content, agenda. I can participate in my lane, whatever my lane is, whether it's hosting, whether it's guest, and stay in that lane.
One of the things that we talk about with new people that come in quite often is about assumed knowledge. So when you're talking for 20 to 40 minutes, the things you're going to talk about are things that you have expertise in. So there's no need to be worried about that. But or not.
Admitting that you don't have expertise.
Yes, knowing that you don't is also totally okay.
Yes.
But you need to also understand that the people listening don't know everything.
Yes. Really good, Nick. Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think if somebody is a subject matter expert, they're not listening to a podcast of a junior unless they feel a need to criticise, and for their own whatever reason that may be. That's not the listener. The listener is education, and I think the best way to educate people is to speak at their level, not try to bring people to your level through being smarter, more intelligent, using bigger words.
Yeah, skipping over detail, silly questions are totally acceptable and encouraged.
Well, they're relevant. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, as I said earlier, my disposition with podcast is the protocol around podcast is to educate and to freely give, not to expect to get because you gave. That's the protocol around podcasting. That hasn't changed since I started in 2015. It's not around telling people how smart you are. From my experience, that's not what I try to do. I may be smart in some areas, but hopefully I'm not articulating that I'm smart and talking down to people and being condescending. Quite the opposite. It's around being vulnerable and transparent, reaching out, call to actions, which are authentic, not sales motivation driven, saying, if you want this, do that. Each to their own. I'm not telling people how to run their business.
Lance, look, I thank you very much for your time, mate. You've provided a bunch of really helpful points that I hope that some of our listeners will appreciate.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nick.